poem with Tiger. I know a place where everything you have ever lost is restored to you, where loss is its own sweet and volatile essence, the perfect helium suns of your grandmother's pearls flung far, and the single bead of sweat distilled from the first boy you loved, the one who left you sitting all night in his car out at Logan. But then you rub your fingernail over the forgotten stub of a wrinkled scratch-your-luck ticket from a gas station on the Massachusetts Turnpike. The prize is a suburban nightmare. The pearls are a theory of dark matter whose ever-present absence explains so much of what is missing. And once you've scratched away the surface, the tiger may yet appear in this poem, caught for a moment in the galaxy of your eye, in the compendium of loss and miracle, where the incompatible loves reside. Pupae. The children have saved what they needed to go. Inheritors of Ferlinghetti and Moonwalk, our lives to them are field rations. They think they will never be that hungry. When they return, it is sandblasts. And if we carried them sleeping in the rain, collected their swirled marbles from the grass, tied heartbreak into bright packets that weighed next to nothing, we did it for this moment of their forgetting. There they go, lighter than we will ever be with what's left us, imprinted though with our blessings, becoming what we were. Stray clothes. My daughter adopts stray clothes. She is not like other children. Even at the age of 2, she feared the desolation of abandoned apparel and went to nursery school wearing every dress in her closet on the hottest day of the year. She learned to tie her shoes before she learned to talk, and when she came home, she tied all the shoes in the house to one another like prisoners in a chain gang, fixed to the bedpost in an unravelable knot. Now, at 19, she wears shoes she found on the garden wall, black leather from the trash, house dresses from the charity box. Once, she brought a black kitten home from the bus stop and nursed it to sleep with her milky finger, but her true heart is with those motherless clothes. She wants to soothe them. She wants to press them close to the lovely fabric of her skin and fill them until they forget the habitation of earlier bodies who stripped them so cruelly of human touch. The vegetarian repents for Eitan. When I am very old, I will eat fish with my husband. I'll gently lift white flesh from bone and let the lemon-soaked cilantro wet dry memory of when I wouldn't put my lips to anything that held its own death so close. Foundling. I neglected to tell my son he is an emissary for the lost. Swaddled yet in the faded charm of old miracles, he doesn't know he's been fooled. The way he slipped right through precaution, it was like an episode of the time tunnel, the house appearing on a map right where it had burned. But he was not the child in the suitcase on the dock at Marseille. He was not the undelivered postcard, or even the lost cat, bird, apotheosis of all the lost creatures, vanished one morning from his tree. As it were, he arrived early. I searched his earlobes for the rolled-up note, but his own destiny was all he had in mind. Some days I'm not sure who fooled whom. I appointed him emissary anyway, and wait here patiently for a sign. I'll finish with this one. This is called Lulu Drank the Lamp Oil, for Patricia and Louis. The day they met, she swore it wouldn't work, but 3 years later, together nonetheless, they host the party at Breakfast Woodworks. The guests, summoned though for dinner, and so suddenly, when the storm fells a branch on the live wire and light is called for from the lamp, it cannot be lit, because Lulu drank the lamp oil, thinking it water, and where, indeed, is the water for the branch, has just caught fire, but the bottle contains only lamp oil, drunk now anyway by Lulu. Noxious, it brings on a noisy slew of vehicles that love emergency, ambulance, fire department, and police. Shall we say a romance of first responders, a gaggle of geese, a swarm of bees, the party plunged in darkness. She thought at least the lamp would work, but Lulu had drunk the oil. Then she knew love is all that works in the dark.
We're moving up. Very nice. We're now here with Michael Dickel. Michael Dickel, who is really pushing his latest book, Midwest, Mideast, here. And you can get it. And he's going to read from this. Please.
Actually, I'm going to start reading from a journal, Indian River Review, a poem of mine called Nothing Remembers. Where in our times these rocks piled into buildings that fell down 1,000 years ago, disremembered from war or earthquake, raised and raised again into where nothing recalls again the warm day anemones bloom, hollyhocks, poppies forget no one, and another rain day, another dry day, pass hot and cold, while an orvani drops blue feathers in flight. A hawk sits calmly on a fence post, and flocks of egrets traipse toward the sea, no cattle, no grains, all harvested. In this place we would call Holy Land, nothing left to it but conflict with the passing of her life that tried so hard to hang on to one moment, many moments missed, so many more empty echoes. A difficult way to say goodbye to a mother, watching her evaporate like rain in the desert, her mind dust that dries lips, her droned words faded as warmth from a midnight rock, meaning that the layers of history these rocks unpiled reveal sepia photos, a couple of tintypes, dust, school reports, cards, newspaper, holes. The shells of bugs raised and raised again and again into our time where nothing remembers. Now I'll read some poems from my book. It is wintry. Unlike what Karen said, one person from Jerusalem made it. I live in Jerusalem. But I used to live in Minnesota, and I could explain why I wasn't stopped by a little bit of slush and ice on the roads. It's different. Okay, you have to look out for the other guys more here. This poem is called Tabula Rasa, and it was written in Minnesota. Blurred snow, washed moraines, wind-cloaked distance, storms. Sleeping stargrass, surrendered blue stem, buried gentian, all frozen. I do not love you or anyone, just another man, content the moment shadow crosses indifferent drift. That's my winter poem. This is late night jazz. I'm sorry, I have to step out in front a little. It's the end of the drive, the night fallen down into the sleeping, dream state of the Union. Awareness of jazz, guitar, and stand-up bass drumming on the sidewalls of our tires, doggedly flashing past the cold air. Smoke and cigarettes. The lovely woman sleeps by the string bass with a coat to keep it warm. And we all want a picture, but Aaron, only Aaron, took photos of the band through the curtains from outside the house while nobody noticed and everybody came engineers hovering in the basement, and writers full of liquor dancing to the rhythm of cowbells. True story. All right, but hear the dissonance, 1948 to 2012, back into the Middle East. Wind blows an aluminum can, percussion section, cars thrum bass. Mind slices melodies on the road above an Arab village. East Jerusalem jazz, somewhere near the Green Line, follows time in the unequal night's metronome. Rising voices sing independently, calling to prayer. Not far from here, the hill of bad counsel smokes in the dark. A whiskey on the table, thinking of what might have been had things turned out differently, listens to the dissonance and sighs for the angel of history. All right, we had a watchmaker's shop. I think Rochelle had to get back to the north, but I thought I would read this in honor of her father, having heard her poem. The watchmaker's shop. The bus slugs along modern highway number 1, but the path echoes back to a time of flint tools, and where once groups of newly terrestrial bipeds climbed down from the Baca Ridge to the sea, and caravans wound through rock to markets, grumbling diesels struggle up the mountains with old cargoes of rock and timber and new goods hidden in steel boxes for new markets. I visited the watch repairman again last week, his lumpy hands dexterous with tweezers that pop watches open and reveal their inner works. He checks the battery. It works, but the watch does not. The clocks on his wall each tell a different story, some refusing daylight savings time, some stop at an idiosyncratic moment, some on time and ticking. The old man behind the counter wears his hours on his face, but his eyes show an inner working, iconoclastic as the visages of stopped clocks. What sort of watchmaker lets a clock stop, and others rebel against industrious light? How can each clock show its own time, some running, some holding still, as though waiting to tell something no longer quite remembered? Only one of the 3 watches I took to him runs again. I left with a new watch, though. Time is slippery in the watchmaker's world. The other day I watched you reading. This morning I saw your same face sleeping. Once, right after we made love, your eyes shone with secret seasons. I recall on our first evening together, leaning on a railing, speaking of much and nothing to jazz music, somewhere near the Baca Ridge. An elderly poet gave me flint tools from that ridge. You and I found a flint tool ourselves last week, or the week before. Each stopped clock tells its story eventually. All time lumbers like this bus, up and down hills, unwinding the paths others used to walk. Each stop holds a memory dear to someone, somewhere. The watchmaker knows his craft. Each clock its own statement. Time carries us at an unreliable pace. We have time for one more? Time again. Geographic time. This is after reading Taham Muhammad Ali's poetry. The poet sells tourist trinkets sitting on his stool in his stall in Nazareth, just below the big church. Olive wood camels piled on the shelves thirst in the Galilee, listening for reflections and shadows. A younger man sells coffee and falafel in Tel Aviv, while the oil roils words to a certain shade of brown and steam hisses applause for each line of thought into yesterday's milk. I pick shells from among rocks, flint from dried weeds, the bone of some animal from among the graves. The voice of a child shrieks behind my apartment. Elsewhere, a house stands empty, without tenants. In Jerusalem, a rabbi cries over his book. Deep in a valley, bronze bells call monks to prayer. Before dawn, the muezzins harmonized the blues across yawning valleys beneath the hill of bad counsel. Tonight, sad melodies will smelt iron from crushed ore, a drum pulsing to keep up. Women will dress nicely for each other, but the men will think it is for them. The poet's son brings him tea on a steel tray, sweet and well-boiled. The young man smells burnt coffee all night, even when his mouth presses against her folds of skin. Shells, flint and bone dream quietly on my bookshelves, wanting me to laugh at their joke, a clock ticking in the corner. Thank you.
Illness, weather, babysitters, age. There are a lot of reasons some of our distant poets couldn't make it here. And so, just to give them the credit they deserve, at least one of them, I'm going to read a poem by Lamy. Obsidian can be polished and shine. Lamy is a poet from Kibbutz Urim and doesn't come to Tel Aviv anymore. So, obsidian can be polished and shine. It is the word I woke with, perhaps alive in my pen all night, though rocks are harder than words, and I only wanted to remember molten blue waves, clear glass moving around our small boat, the scant hour we sat facing pirate caves, rocking as we sat and marveled, and small sprays spring by winds around us, on us, reminders of jumping fish and the ancient fishing tactics, how to be a fisherman, or just a gawking tourist in a boat by the sea. This is Lamy. Only because of Richard's poem about Moses, I thought, I have to read my poem about Moses. But I identify with Moses because he studied. And for me, it's very hard to speak. So this poem is called Spit it out, Moses, I tell him impatiently. Give me the whole word at once. It isn't stuttering, you know, he says suddenly clearly. Every letter could go on its own many different ways. I have to be so careful not to say something that those Israelites will interpret in some extreme direction. That's why I needed to get the laws etched out for them in stone. The rest of what I'm going to read is all brand new, never read before, totally, barely copyrighted. And so I should look at the clock and tell you, maybe give up when I get to the right time. All my life I've been learning to grow up. My spurts get longer, get larger each time, even though they're further apart and sometimes repeat themselves. Sometimes I meet myself turning a corner too slowly, recognizing, like a book that you realize you've read only when you're halfway through it the second time. Some serious poems. These are all about stage 4 lymphoma and discovering the awakening. That night the tests came back. You were half asleep when I logged in and saw them, and you continued your journey into dreams while I surfed all night, lost in a web of facts, suddenly adult, with real death before me, and only a virtual world to commiserate. Trying to pray is another in this series. Trying to pray. It is not only the problem of letters, that when you focus on them, you can't see beyond. It's the whole throng of words, bunched together in uneven fragments with no apparent leader, or even limitations. The logic of them escapes me, and the idea of sequence itself seems so dependent on mere faith. In the hospital, the believers read the Psalms, blindly rocking back and forth and sheltering their shamed faces in the tiny white wings of the books. Perhaps someday, they pray, I will be free enough from fear to perceive how one idea follows another and be led through the shadow of death. I can't read these. I'll give you one more of this. You have transcended statistics, the doctor says, and smiles. Now that smile in itself is a miracle. Every day I fall out of love and in it again. You are always someone else, remembering a different past, looking forward to a singular day, yet the same beloved I've known over and over. And I too am changed by your changing self. This element remains the same, simple and clear as running water. Physical mistress. This is my night for pure pleasure. Seductively I slip into the center.